Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Friday, November 15th, 2024, and today's topic will be still facing the challenge. It's going to be called the Challenge Part 2. And it's going to be about inking step by step. So before we begin, welcome back if you're returning, welcome if you're new. I sketch and post every day, and I use timers to stay focused and to build a sketching habit. Usually it's 5 minutes, but today I'll do 10-minute timers because inking is, you have to take your time, basically. So I'll start a 10-minute timer right now. And for today, I'm going to be using to ink this illustration. So yesterday's video, if you haven't checked it out, you might want to, because it explained how to come up with this sketch step by step. And I'm going to be using this Sharpie pen, which is like a fine point. And it's a new one. So part of it is I want to use a fine point, and we'll go over that. And then also I want to use this pen to see how it works. I mean, from writing up here, I liked it. Alright, so I'll just kind of leave this here. And yeah, to get warmed up, because I know there's different people watching. For some people, it's the daily sketching routine that's the important thing, just checking in every day with these videos. So I think that's great. And then part of it is also people that want to learn how to ink, and then also people who just already know how to do all that stuff, but maybe just like get a different perspective and ideas. So to begin with, let's do some warm-up inking. Maybe I'll do it off to the side here. So I wanted to first of all show you my progress on the third page of my mini comic. It'll serve a few purposes. One, to kind of just show you where it's at. And I'm going to do more work on this. And let you know once I compile it into these are the other 2 pages. If you are interested, I have videos. I think it was from maybe a couple of weeks ago. But might have to cough. You have to excuse me, because the weather's getting cooler. So part of this is that, one, I can kind of get warmed up with this pen. The other thing is that I really wanted to ink this, and I'll talk about this in a minute if I can get it to not blur. I'll keep an eye on that. I guess it's like the distance of the camera, but I mean, I like it. I'm kind of stubborn. Yeah, I really wanted to work on it, but instead I worked on this. And that's actually a good thing, because I sort of differentiate between, like, to me this is kind of like, it started off as something for the channel, but then I also have like my personal projects that will eventually be published and stuff, and so I kind of, that's like another, like that's more work for me, but I like to like separate them in that kind of way. Like I'm not using the channel as a excuse to do that work, I guess. But let me just kind of, one, erase some of these pencil lines, and that's what we'll do on that other illustration. But yeah, we'll take it a step at a time though. But whenever you erase the pencil lines, it helps, because then you can go in and fix some things. Now sometimes there's nothing to fix. I mean, there's more work on this guy right here. Looks like, well, one, I wanted to make these rocks look a little bit more defined. So part of why I wanted to start with this is to warm up, but then also to kind of show like the different approaches, because this one I kind of went crazy on this mini comic because I knew like I kind of gave myself permission to go kind of crazy, and that's why it's a mini comic, because I wouldn't necessarily use this style like all the time. Like I use different pens, different techniques, like whiteout, all kinds of things. So, but I like the look of this pen on this paper, so I'll just stick with that. Okay. So just going back to what I was saying about like the different styles. There's so many ways you could approach like pen and ink and inking and line work. And with that in mind, let me start with a pencil, so that for those of you who are still working on the drawing aspect, so okay, in this picture, if you compare it to yesterday, I did work on this figure. I didn't want to ink it, although I wanted to, but I didn't, because I wanted to show the process. But I did make the silhouette like better, basically. And part of why I did like yesterday's sketch, like if you can get it to that point, like it's still good. Like you could actually ink that, but you probably would need to do more work. And one reason I ended up, to me, this is more of a character, like it looks better. Part of it was because of the sword. Like I had to draw this, so that's part of it. And that's also part of like the style and stuff. But before moving on to like inking, one, you want to make sure that your like the silhouette, that's really like the topic here, is make sure the silhouette is good, and make sure your shapes are good, and make sure that you solve those problems like that you know. And in fact, you could clean this up and like just use a pencil and just have more definite lines as a like in pencil, and it would still look good, and it's not a bad idea, because you can still have a successful pencil drawing. And I mean, I took a picture of this, so it's good to do that too, to have like the, because once you ink it, I mean, you're not going to have this. So it's not bad to do this. It's not bad to like just use a pencil, and especially if you're still learning. Now I'm going to remove excess lead for the inking, because it makes it easier. And I won't necessarily be able to ink everything, but I want to cover like the important stuff in the, so that you can kind of see, like, because there's just some things that help. They're like tips, really, and that just comes from me, like the struggles that I went through. So I'm just gonna erase some of this stuff here, some unnecessary lines. Like if you're not sure about something, so this far away mountain, is this blurry like the whole time? Okay, sorry about that. I'll kind of remove my hand so you can see. So it's helpful to get your shapes figured out. But then when you go to ink it, so that's 10 minutes, by the way. Let me start another one. When you go to ink it, like, the ink is gonna do a lot. But this is kind of just solving, like if you see some issues, just go ahead and figure it out. And by issues, I just mean like the drawing, the composition, remove anything that's kind of unnecessary. Because when you go to ink, it's all about how deliberate you are. Because with pencil, even if you do it pretty like definite, it's always going to look a little sketchy because it's pencil. It's always going to look like pencil. With ink, there's just a lot of, it can look really finished, it can look really sketchy. It's more versatile in that way. And also this part of this is about demonstrating the difference between like a sketch versus like a sketchy style versus an illustration. There's just a lot that goes into it. But like you don't have to know all that stuff like all at once. So I'm just kind of giving myself some notes about the composition. Because also the thing with ink is that it's a little bit closer to painting than pencil, but it's kind of in between. Okay. I apologize for the coughing. I'm covering my mouth so it's not too loud. I was doing okay, but then as I start to speak, I think it's worse. Okay. So this was kind of a warm-up, but also, like I said, just make sure like your drawing is the way you want, and also you don't have to ink it. You can just go in with a pencil and darken it, and it would still look pretty good, and you can use like a darker lead or something, so if you feel more comfortable that way. But if even like, just make sure the sketch looks good. Like I could go in more and keep like drawing this until it's really tight and then ink over it, like basically trace over it. It's just I'm not gonna do that, but I mean you could. It's up to you, like how far you need to take like the pencil, and you may not even want to ink it. Alright, so let's begin. So for something that has like a border, I tend to just start with the border, something that is simple. I would say that this is the first pass of inking. So just kind of keep that in mind too, that there's going to be at least 2 passes. Well, you could do 1. So what I'm going to do today is the first pass, but like be very deliberate. But almost guaranteed you're going to need to do a second pass because 1, there's going to be things that you miss, and then 2, it's good to step away so that you come back, because that's really where like overworking just comes from either you made a mistake or like you didn't really know what you were doing, like the plan was off, or like you were forcing it and so you overworked it. Because as I always like, the mantra of pen and ink is less is more. Also, even like the style, like it changes. So for example, like I'm just gonna stick with this one pen, and so there's like one that they call this like this line is like a dead line, and that's okay because I just want it to be that way. But that's also a good thing if you're still figuring stuff out. Is to just stick with the one, like the pen. The other thing is that once you get this far, again, you can make the pencils as detailed as you need it to be. There's so many options. So what I'm going to do is remove some of this excess, and part of why I want to do this is not only for the inking, like the inking itself, but the other thing is that it'll get rid of the unnecessary detail and help me with like the silhouette. So for example, first of all, some of the light has already been established, and because of the shadow here, so we're going to play that up, but I wouldn't go in on the shadow. There's like a kind of priority. Like I wouldn't necessarily just start sketching like or inking like the head. It's just stuff like that. Like one thing could be I would use a ruler for like the sword, but I wouldn't necessarily like start with that. So it's just like if the light's coming kind of from the front and casting a shadow, there's certain things that are going to have a line. And so if there's certain shapes that already look pretty good, you can just kind of, just to get started, like start putting these definite lines. And then the question might be, what's the difference between this? So this is, I guess, the line art. It might be like, what's the difference between this and like sketching? It's just the deliberateness of it. So because of the type of pen, like this pen is pretty much like a dead line. Maybe it helps to zoom in a little. Again, I'm gonna just kind of take you step by step through, not necessarily like finishing this illustration, but like just the process. And then what's left over is basically just the same thing. It just takes some work. So one thing is that with these kinds of pens, it's kind of easier. So if this is the first pass, this is kind of the safe thing to do. And then once you get kind of warmed up, you can be a little bit more like loose with it and stuff. So there's certain things that, this is kind of like your edges when it comes to like inking. Like for example, if there's boots, and you can be a little bit more. So notice like that's like a tangent right there with that, like the boots with that, like that. So that's the kind of stuff you want to, like you may not want to ink that yet. So I tend to, approach it from kind of like the dark area because I can adjust it. And then some parts where it's light, like maybe right here, I may not outline that. So that's really what's happening here is like the outline. But I'm not really, I mean, I may end up kind of outlining this, like the character more, but it really just depends on the overall picture. There's not this thing where you go, okay, well I have to outline, like it's just automatic. Like it doesn't have to be that way. Like it can look pretty outlined. So that's 10 minutes. Without actually having to outline everything is my point. I'll start another one. That's already 20 minutes, hopefully. I mean, we've started to ink, so that's good. So as you do this, you'll start to, like the silhouette will start to like show up for you. And you'll start to loosen up. And usually when you're at this point is when you want to be in the zone and listen to music and stuff like that. So some of the way that I'm speaking is to help with that, where you could just kind of listen to this like in the background. And also the way that I'm approaching this allows me to speak but also ink. So this is just one approach right here. The way that I'm doing this is just to get it started. Another way is if you like figure out, so yeah, there's just like a whole lot going on. Like you could decide that you're gonna, so this has to do with like the value pattern. So you could decide that you want this to be kind of dark, and then that'll leave that lighter. Oops, I can't see it. And that'll leave that part lighter, the background mountains. And then as you do this, you might think, like, how would you render that? And so that's why I'm saying to just use like one pen. And in fact, you'll notice like I'm not going to ink that right now. Like because I'm going to use this as kind of the standard. So yeah, you'll note. So I've already just like, I wasn't totally thinking about what I was doing just then, and that's a part of it. I mean, right now I'm just kind of explaining things, but your style is like your handwriting. So I'm liking this. Like I'm liking this pen. For me, this is kind of a safe way to ink this, to do the line work. Now, one thing I am keeping in mind though is that like I actually want to color this, but I'm going to keep this in black and white, and then I'm going to color it with some pens. That'll probably be the next video. And so I'm leaving it kind of open on purpose because of the color. I'm going to let the color kind of do a lot of the work. So once you start to get going, you're just using this is kind of like the bass notes. it's like the rhythm part, just to use a music analogy. And then you'll find that your pencil lines, that you kind of erased, will start to give you shapes, interesting shapes. And it's like you want to always come back to like so an example is, so I was gonna finish, let me finish my thought. Yeah, you always want to come back to the silhouette, but I'm not gonna erase that because that might not be dry. That's the other thing, be careful, make sure it's dry. So there's some parts that you can just kind of get rid of the pencil lines, and then that'll help to kind of see. So like if I were just gonna make it black and white without coloring, I might shade that in, but I'm not going to, because I'm gonna let color do that. So to me, this is kind of an easy and like sort of safe but still like aesthetically pleasing approach. And some of this stuff I know that I'm going to use color to do the shadow instead of like shading it in with pen. So that's pretty simple. Then the other thing is with swords, you pretty much have to use a ruler. So you might as well get that taken care of. But even then, I might like kind of break up the line a little bit. So I think that if you're using kind of a dead line like this is, it's kind of good to not like outline everything, because it looks pretty boring that way. But since I know that I'm going to be coloring this, that's why I'm not too worried about the dead line thing, because I know the color is going to make up for it. So that's a good start for the figure. And yeah, just kind of get rid of this. And then like just check your silhouette. One thing that helps with this paper, if you can see it, can't really see it, but like I can check the outline. So once you do some, like make some progress, you might want to take a photo and then flip it on your phone to see. You'll usually see some stuff like this, like the shadow stuff. I might indicate a little bit, but maybe the color will take care of a lot of that. Also, like when you get to the sword part, like you have some chances to, like it doesn't have to be perfect, and then you have some chances to adjust it. Like if you know you're gonna use color, or if you know that if you're not gonna use color, then the next pass would be more inking. So I might use a few of these lines. And then just kind of give myself like a reminder to not have that tangent. But so things like tangents, you're probably going to notice that like after, like, so that's why it's good to work on it for a while and then step away, and then you'll see stuff like that. But it's good to just let the eye kind of fill in like the gaps. But that's why I'm not really gonna record like every, like, this is the basic step, but then the rest of it is just kind of looking at it and filling in the detail. And since I know that I'm gonna color it, one, I'm gonna do some practice of the coloring. It's just because I got some pens and markers. And then like once you start erasing some of this, kind of go back in. So yeah, that's pretty simple. And then as far as like back here, I'm gonna stick with this one pen and just do this. Again, it's because of the fact that I know I'm gonna color it. The color is gonna take over a lot of this stuff. But this still helps you as like a value guide because it's probably going to get darker. You can use these pen lines for when you color it. So that's another 10 minutes. Has that already been 30 minutes? It's incredible. So I would just do this and keep checking the composition, keep checking the like silhouette. And this was meant to be a pretty simple illustration, but still something nice, because in the last video I mentioned this was supposed to be my avatar for like a goal setting and hero's journey kind of thing. And just be very sparing, because again, less is more. And like for the clouds, there might be like a little bit, but I wouldn't put too much line work there. Maybe a bit here. And then like the lighting can change a little bit. But a lot of that is from, oh crap, it's blurry. Sorry if it's been kind of blurry here and there, but I think you get the point. So part of what this is about, so this is the first pass, and it's just to kind of plan it out for yourself. Remember that less is more. It's better to not ink it. And so notice that everything that I've put down so far has been deliberate. Like there hasn't been like an accidental like line, which is part of like what makes it work as a like an illustration. But this is the first pass, and depending on what you want to do with it, like if it helps to kind of leave some of the pencil, then leave it for like before you go in to color. Like if it helps to kind of give yourself like a reminder here, might want to do that. Check the composition. Make sure it reads. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just looking at the other side of it. You can take a photo and do that. That's a good trick. Or hold it up to a mirror or look at the other side, which is kind of why I like this thin paper. So yeah, just make sure it reads. And then when you go to color it, which I may actually start coloring it, just so you know, and then kind of talk about that, because I don't know if I can wait to not color it, unless I use like I have other sketches, so I might just do that. because I do like to show you the steps. So notice that now that I've done this, like erased it, like you can start to see, but notice how definite it is. That's the thing. Like I'm not accidentally, like everything was put in deliberately. And part of that is the style, part of it is it's a good style. I mean, it's what makes it look finished. So yeah, I'm not even gonna, just think about what line you're gonna put down. Now compare that to, so this is where we're at right now. I'll come back to it in a second. Compare that to this, which is still, it's sketchy, but it could still be considered finished. It's probably more like, you could still color it. Like yeah, it's just an experiment. But just kind of notice the difference. Like I used a medium point for this, but then also something thinner. I used like a brush. So it's not bad. But this one I intentionally wanted to color it, so like once you erase like some stuff, you might want to go back in and kind of make sure the shape is correct. So yeah. So this is the first pass of this. If I were going to ink it, I might think about, do I want to go, if I were to like just keep it in ink, I would go in probably with the medium point, because that felt tip kind of gets different line widths, and like just think about stuff like that. But I'm going to color it. But yeah, with that said, hopefully that was helpful, and if you enjoy the video, so well, first, thanks for joining me, and yeah, if you enjoy these videos, please support the channel, and until next time, keep on sketching.